Someone gave me a thicker mask to use. I'm not sure anything I say would be audible speaking through that. So welcome back this morning. For those of you who are online, to take up an entrepreneurial idea and then see what were the connections to policy, to finance, to markets, and to society in order to make that entrepreneurial idea succeed. So each one of these groups will be giving a presentation on what their ideas are and what are the things that the system needs to provide in order to support them. And I hope that's what people have actually done, because I have no idea what they did. They're working on electronic laptops, so I couldn't look over their shoulders onto a flip chart and eavesdrop and kvetch and interfere. So we'll see what happens without the benighted interference of this particular facilitator. And who would like to go first on this? It's 15 minutes per presentation, including questions. And we will break at 11:30 when we will have Rebecca from WRI speaking to us on a video link. So we'll do that. And I'm happy to take a volunteer for who wants to go first. And do you have the connection to the electronics so that you can present and everybody can see it, both virtually and real? Does anybody have a way to connect? Yeah, it looks like we need a pause for a little bit of gathering of presentations. So is there a presentation that's ready that we can put on my flash drive and pass to the technical team?
Ours is a little bit manual. Maybe we'll just.
You have it as notes?
Yeah.
Sawa.
So brother drew on the flip chart, so I don't know if the others would go there.
No,
Software.
flip charts, and then the camera can pick up what's being done on the flip chart. What, and you will draw on the flip chart? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Okay.
Camera, where's easy for you? Put the flip chart here. And those are not working.
Okay.
For those of you who are still working on your presentations, will you put them on a flash and give them to the technical guys? And who's working on the presentation? Because I will come around and harass you. Martin, are you working on one? No. Who did yours? Azadi? Okay. And yours is done? That's yours. Who's got the other presentations? You're working? That's two. And this is the third?
Iman, she's done.
Oh, Iman.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will pass the flash drive around. You've already given, oh, you've emailed it. Okay, yeah, email it or flash it. Okay, over to you, Shamra.
Good morning. We handled the assignment. We are group 2 and has given the honor to do the presentation. So I'm going to be very brief. There are 4 things that you had to consider in the presentation, and I'm not going to go into that unless I go into the particulars of how we figured out on how to handle them. But our entrepreneurial idea was on a solar farm. That we would have to install in a particular village within the country. And so I'll explain which village would end up being the best village, because we could not go to some parts of this country for the same village. So the first thing we would handle, and we gave so much focus, was on the market. So on our end, we had to do a market survey. What would this market survey entail? We would first wish to know, for example, the level of demand that is existent within the village on the use of solar energy. Before you think about selling, setting up the farm, we would first take the main opportunity to know, is there demand for such for such energy? So once we check on the demand and we ascertain that there is demand, we would also look at the existing competitors, per se to say, we would look at some of the existing solutions that have been provided within that village. The reason why this is important is we will know about, how to bring in the other factors. But the moment you've not first taken a market survey and you've not known the solutions that have been provided, then you would not be able to provide, to go into the other policy questions or the societal questions that you need to consider. So we would wish to know if, for example, the M-Shwari thing is existent, because I think they do solar panels or ABCD. We would first have to understand the existing suppliers within the market. Secondly, we would also look at the trends. The reason why we look at the trends are in very many types. For example, we look at we estimate the growth rate. The reason why we are going to estimate the growth rate is because we are not just going to remain small forever. Maybe we would reach to a point where we would need to grow. So we would wish to know within what particular time the population changes and the estimated growth rate of the population, or some other demographic factors that we need to consider within the market, so that we know how we are going to intervene and if we need to scale up, actually, because the issue of scalability and the market and the trends of the market will inform the financial model that we are going to use. So that is why we are going to focus so much on the trends on the market when we are doing our market survey. So sorry, we called our idea Wasafi Solar Farm. The reason why we picked Wasafi Solar Farm is because of the clean energy. So we had to take the Swahili word for clean. And then after we looked at these important factors, that is the demand, the existing players, within the market. The most other important thing we would look at the market is the supply. The supply on this end will be the equipment that we will need. We had a very long discussion because we had some of us who are experts in the installation of these solar plants, and they say that the amount of counterfeits is too high. So we had to ascertain and be very sure that whatever we are going to bring that will influence the production process will have to be quality and will have to be to the standard that is required. So that is the first step we would take. Once we've taken that step, we go to the policy question for our idea. Had it been in the early 2000s or any other time, doing that policy, policy understanding would be simple. But right now we've got two levels of government. We've got the national and the county government. And each one is implementing a revenue model. Each one is implementing a taxation model. Each one is implementing a regulatory model, framework. So the other most important thing we will have to do is deploy another team that would understand the policy regulations that exist within at the national level and at the county level. The key thing why we wanted to start with the national level is because, for example, when we will be importing the solar panels or the or the enablers of distributing the energy, we will have to look at someone was sharing an experience, and he talked about just a minute. He talked about type approval. You may go for a particular type of a solar that may not be approved by the regulations of the national government. So before you even think about the county government, this is the first port of call, so that we understand the solar model. The solar types we are going to bring from out of the country, so that by the moment we have this, we can go and to the county level and understand their regulations. So this is where the key bottlenecks are: the imports, the types, the Kenya Bureau of Standards. So this is where we will deploy a bigger team to understand the national level regulations and the licensing, so that we don't bring something that the county government would accept, and at the national level, you could not even import it. Once we are done with that, of course, there are many other regulatory issues that always come up. We are going to need land for the farm. So we are also going to look at the land regulations, at the national level. And how do we acquire that, and how do we operate that? And at the county level, they also have some of the regulations that they've put up. So these two levels are what we'll be focusing on. And then finally, and we had a very long deliberation on this, the taxation regulations. So because we may have these solar panels, we want the best quality for the market, but the taxation regimes, are not going to favor us. So once we've done this analysis and understood the taxation and understand how to work with it, then we will be able to move to the next step after that. And now look at how do we finance this? We are assuming we've understood all the policy regulations, and they are going to work within they are going to be favorable to the equipment that we are going to import and bring on board. Now, how do we finance this idea? This was the elephant in the room. We almost spent 30 minutes only on the financing question, because how do we finance this? There are so many players already offering solar solutions. So on financing, we explored many options. And one of the most interesting things is we still had someone who is an expert in it. And he said, if you approach any commercial bank telling them that I want to set up a solar farm, you're going to have the longest time explaining to them how they are going to get their return on investments, or even what is the value proposition as you're starting as an entrepreneur. So the first idea we had in mind of financing is on seed capital. This is normally at times available for startups, and the colleagues who are with us, and I think is maybe on a call out here, but he advised us, and we would have, had a very good model, because they used an example of Magiru hydropower. So Magiru hydropower has benefited from some of this startup capital. So if we go that way, because of the social benefits that this is going to have in the community, then we would get up the startup capital to start. And then from there, we would explore options like venture capital. But this is a long-term idea that we had. So the short-term idea was getting the seed capital. And also from the team that is going to start up the solar farm, we would also do a contribution towards this. And the reason why we thought the solar idea would be easier is you would take an whole, I think, of a lifetime to save and to think that you're going to get what we saw yesterday at the Kengen plants. So the starting of, of a solar farm would be much easier as compared to starting, the geothermal thing. So we were sure that if we had a financing model and we could get the seed capital, by the first year, the impact would have been felt, because we would have connected more households. And in our financing model, we were also thinking that apart from the households, the other option that we would also look at is we would look at the institutions within the market, because we will also consider that. If there are schools, private schools, for example, if there are health centers, if we can be able to connect them to the solar farm and they become part of our market, you see, that would give us the opportunity to scale up. And if you connect to a school of, you say 400 students, you are already giving these 400 students the power and the opportunity in an affordable way to study. If you connect to a health center, there would be so many people. For example, if it's visited by 1,000 people per, say, 1 or 2 months, then you're expecting the impact to have been maximized because of the outreach of the people that you're going to reach. So the first port of call would be the households, but then we would also look at the institutions within the village that we'll be focusing on, because that would also help us draw more capital, and it would help us, it would give us the latitude to shift from seed capital to venture capital. Because of course the market is growing and it would be attractive to any investor. But if we stuck only probably to households, it may also not be easier for you to get the market and keep growing while maximizing impact, because that is what we intend. If we can get to a school and we can reach to 400 students, then we are going to maximize on impact. So we had listed some of the institutions that can help with the seed capital, and I think one of sorry. Okay. So let me go to the last thing. Okay. So we would rather not have presented. So the last one is on society. And I would give it in the form of an example. Someone had an experience of setting up the network masts in one of the parts of Northeastern in this country. But you see, the community are nomadic. So when they shift, they go to a place where there's no network, and they tell you, we need that mast to move. So they invented a model they called communication on wheels, which they called cow. So when this nomadic pastoralists move, the communication equipment can be shifted. So as we go into the solar farm, it would be hard to move. So the first idea that we would have is that the target village or the target 2-3 villages would be, even if they are nomadic, it is only the animals that move, but the households remain, because there are those other opportunities. You can move the cattle, but the households remain, and only a few people will follow and go with the cattle. So that is one consideration that we are going to make. Lastly, so that I can complete, of course, we came up with an idea that we need to have what we call a social license. Social license is a concept someone shared this. We were having a conversation that you have to get the community buy-in. So before we launch and start the solar farm, we have engaged with the community, shown the benefits, not only to each household, but to the schools and centers around the village, so that when we set up the farm, it would not, it would also be secure. Vandalism or any other thing would be hard to happen. So the question I'd leave with you, and it was a question we also pondered: what about the disposal of these solar panels after 20 years? So that's something to think about. Maybe I can pick one question too and then complete.
I'm just looking at time.
Okay.
And we started a bit late. We're going to run over. So I suggest that we do as many presentations as we can.
Okay.
And we have a bit of slack before lunch.
Okay.
So we'll come back. Let's take 5 minutes for questions. Of any. I have one, and maybe that was too much.
Okay.
When you're looking at demand, did you look at what people could afford? So what is the price that they can actually pay?
When we were looking at demand,
It's sort of because in the compendium, we found that what was a big determinant of energy use was the price that people could afford.
sure. So when we were looking at demand, we were of course looking at the cost, or rather affordability, and which makes solar quite better. Because if we are going to incur less cost with the purchasing and installation, then the cost would not be as compared to what maybe geothermal would sell to the power distributor.
I guess what I'm thinking about price is, what were people willing to pay?
Yes.
Not just cost, but what can they actually, are they willing to pay you?
Yeah, sure. When we are doing the market survey, we thought we were discussing that we would ask them the cost of the the energy forms they are using, so that we can do a comparison with what we want to introduce. And I thought we put it as the current solutions. We had to look at the current solutions.
But also, remember I said, we segmented our market into people that we sell directly to, villages, but also looking at institutions around.
Yes, sir.
But also looking at institutions around the village. So we diversified our revenue into that. The individuals that we could use, you could sell to the solar directly, but also institutions like hospitals who can then not have a lot of problems with the amount that we will be leveraging from them for the cost of the solar.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. It's not a question, but just a suggestion on that point. We did a study I think 1 or 2 years ago, and realized that the majority of Kenyans don't track their energy consumption, their energy costs. So you might need to consider the kind of market research you want to do. Okay. You might need to design it in such a way that you have a cohort that you will be studying over time. Okay. Because if you go to them right now, they don't have that data.
Okay. So lack of data is the question. Okay.
And we have some things in the compendium for that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, is another group ready to go? Jabri. I'll give you 20 minutes, 15 minutes to present.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. We have a slide, maybe the tech team, it's just one slide that it can stay on the screen while I talk through it. The one with the tomato. Yeah, no, there's much. There's a rationale behind it. No, that one is group one. Cool. Yeah. So, so before I start, I just want to say we have Agri in the room, FDB. So I'm going to ask you both a question at the end. So I hope you'll be focusing on our enterprise because we're taking it very seriously. In my group, it's called Merge Enterprises. It's a sole and it's a sole proprietorship. There's Martin, Azadi, Jabri, Jasper. It's a very intergenerational business model. And what we focus on, so our enterprise, it's not just on energy, but we going to the productive use. So from growing our crop, the tomato, to the processing, the storage of it, the distribution of it up to the market. So we went across the value chain. So if you can start with maybe just the business first. So the business, and it's in this region, and it's close to Olkaria. And we're actually we're piping steam, excess steam from the plant to our greenhouse, because the steam would be controlled by an ICT control system that can control the CO2, the moisture level, the temperature level in our one greenhouse. Then the greenhouse for the water would have a solar water pump to control, to also get the water to for our crops, our crop in the greenhouse, and then we'd have vertical, sort of a vertical alignment. So it's not a very land intensive model. There's a lot of space optimization. So it's one greenhouse, but the amount of productivity is a lot because we're not using a lot of land, yet we're producing a lot of produce. So that's kind of it. And then we want to can it, tomato paste, and then we'll distribute it to the market. The selling point for our good is that it's fully organic, and there's no pest, there's no pesticide, and we're not using fertilizers. So it's fully organic. And then I'll just go through those four tenants. So for the market one, and Barbara, you had mentioned, what are people willing to pay? So Jasper had mentioned blue ocean pricing, where you actually go to the community and you ask them, what would you pay? And then we also have to break even. So across all the money we're putting into it, and how much profit can we extract from this enterprise? So we're asking the community, and then we are doing that market research to determine the pricing. But also there's like a misconception, the perception that canned foods, that maybe it's GMOs. People don't want like fresh tomatoes. They don't want processed foods. So we have to do an awareness raising campaign on why should they use our goods. And then also the market, one of the other market barriers is also the access to retailers and distributors. If you want to send it not to just the Carrefours, but the kiosks, to go to the community level. So to access the retailers. For the distributors, we had at the end decided we will distribute, we'll absorb that cost in the enterprise. And then also, there's also that knowledge gap. When you're doing that market research, and if you want it to be really well done, you might have to commission the research from a consultant. And that's another pricing element to it. For the affordability, it also goes into the market research, asking ourselves if we can afford the enterprise, and at the end, will the market be able to take on our goods, the consumers to buy our goods so we can break even. So that's on the market barriers. And if we can go to The financial barriers, capital, of course. The source, that high initial investment where we are buying the piped steam from Kengen, and we want to set up our greenhouse, and we want to do the solar pump, and that ICT control center, and the seedlings, and the labor, all that, we have to source capital for at least the initial investment before we can break even. And then we started putting a hierarchy. So you want capital. What's the best source of capital for anyone? Especially in an African context, you are thinking individuals, your friends, your family. You don't have to pay any interest. You don't have to, it can be just it could be a grant, it could be a loan that you don't have to pay interest, you don't have to apply for it. It could be an M-Pesa direct to your phone where you can start your business. So that's the best source of capital, is individuals that you know, friends and family. Then we go to the grants. Yeah, but there's a lot of bureaucracy there. Concessional loans, and then at the kind of what we framed as quote unquote the worst source of capital is commercial banks, because that's a profit-driven business and they have to get their return on investment. And then financial literacy. If you want to get capital, you have to first of all to know that this is the institutions that are offering grants. If you don't know, knowledge is power. And then also the protocols, the procedure. How do you apply for a loan? How do you apply for a grant? How do you set up your business plan, the loan application? All these things are challenges. And then policy. So, okay, for policy, I just want to say that Kenya, this is a food processing business. And one of our Vision 2030 pillars is food security, but also SDG 2, zero hunger. So those are like flare signals on the international sphere, but also on the domestic sphere. We have said food security is a priority in the globe and in our country. So how are policies, domestic policies, aligned with this SDGs and our vision for the country? And then first of all, there was no kind of a policy or legal framework, a statute of our parliament that jumped to us that we knew it. And we were thinking of researching it. But then that was also a point where Jasper mentioned that there's no singular reference point for these regulations, for the policies, for the laws, what institution. It's very fragmented. This country has a lot of committees that are paid a lot of money and they are not well known. They avoid the public eye because if you're well known, you're subject to scrutiny. So what is the reference point for the policies? And then also on the same note, the governing laws. There's no specific one. What laws would govern this business? All the across the value chain, from when we're sourcing the steam, when we're penetrating the market, what laws would govern us? If you're not a legal practitioner, and even if you're a legal practitioner, it's so fragmented. And then we're also mentioning that initially this country had a role called Agricultural Extension Services, where this would be government officials that would go to the community level and offer services. If someone wanted to go into farming, they would offer technical expertise. But now that's been undertaken by the private sector. A lot of privatization of what would have been public access to knowledge. You now have to pay a consultant. So yeah, that's also a challenge, and that's policy linking to financial barriers, to market barriers. And then the societal barriers, where I also want to talk about the market and the societal barriers, where what I had mentioned, bias against canned, processed foods. But you can process an organic tomato, you just crush it. The processing is just crushing it, and then you can it. And we're not using plastic cans, we're using metal cans, which are recyclable. And then how do you move away from inefficient agricultural practices, the land intensive and the labor intensive, and we do that vertical growing, and we maybe do hydroponics where we don't use the soil. How do we extract as much value from the greenhouse as possible? So I think I'll stop there. I'll keep it short. I'll keep it sweet, like our tomatoes. And I just want to ask, and then you can get a question from Agra, from AFDB. Would you grant? Would we be able to secure a grant from Merge Enterprises if we approached your? It's a theory. You don't have to commit to it. I was thinking the worry, but yeah. So just your reflections. If this approached Agra, would it go through the bureaucracy? Would it make it to the end? Yeah.
Speaker, Mike, please.
Oh, to start with the bank.
Use the mic is what I'm saying, whoever's speaking.
I just wanted to add something. The linkages between steam, hot steam, which is an energy source, we are supposed to link with Olkaria. There's a lot of waste steam that come from the power plant. Is there policy frameworks for using this steam for agricultural purposes? Because the steam itself has got CO2, has got some other useful gases, there's got warmth, and then it's got humidity that can be very useful in a greenhouse to make sure that we use this energy efficiently. Secondly, the greenhouse is powered by solar power to drive all the ICT system that runs this very highly automatized, I don't know what that's English, farming for intensification, use of this one greenhouse to produce more produce than several greenhouses. So efficient use of the few resources that we have using technology. And this has got an element of technological barrier, financial barrier, knowledge barriers, all these things come together, which we think must be sorted, starting with policy for agriculture and energy to enable our venture to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. That's interesting points. And coming to Dudley's question, would any of the financial people in the room say, yes, keep going on this, I might want to back it? And Sonia, I know you're a financial person sitting right there.
Thank you. Definitely. I think Merge Enterprises is really impressive. And for the bank, the Africa Development Bank specifically, our strategy is on inclusive and green growth. And this project particularly is very attractive because it does use clean energy, which is mitigating climate change and is yielding adaptation core benefits in terms of food security, reducing wastage, and all that. So yes, it would be attractive. In terms of securing financing, that we have, and grant specifically, for loan it would be a challenge because our lending to private sector will begin at about $10 million. But for grants, there are, there's an Africa Climate Change Fund, which because this project really touches on both mitigation and adaptation, would be attractive to the bank in terms of application. We also have a program called the Jobs for Youth in Africa that also has called for proposals as well. And the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, I think they recently launched a call for applications as well. So definitely for institutions such as us who are really focused on the climate change aspect of this project and increasing food security, which is one of our high 5 priorities, yes, it would work.
So who do we approach on Monday?
I'd advise you to first check because we usually go through a call for proposals. I know for the Africa Climate Change Fund and Africa Acceleration Program, they closed about a month ago, but this can always be given to these funds and on the next call of applications can be prioritized, but well done on the idea.
Yeah, I think quite impressive in terms of the fact that you are using a lot of issues of climate change. I mean, climate smart approach to agriculture. this could be considered under sustainable farming, where we look at how to, one, scale in terms of we may look at it as bringing broader ecosystem into this rather than funding this as a standalone, so that we're looking at bringing in access to finance and using digital DFIs. We're looking at the broader aspect of extension services. So looking at more of a consortia funding where we have different stakeholders working with you to really scale and enable sustainability, because this ensures a lot of sustainable agriculture in terms of you are getting your tomato from farmers and processing it. And then, of course, looking at also access to market. How do we enable access to market in all these structures? So it will maybe funded in a consortium model, which would work very well to scale, and also look at enabling different stakeholders as you're working with smallholder farmers who are actually giving you the tomatoes for you to process and so forth.
Thank you both, Agra and FDB. I think Jasper, let's start thinking about this after that. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you for that. This is fantastic. We've got time for one more presentation before Rebecca is going to speak to us. So who would like to go next? Iman, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. So I'll be presenting for group 4. So we have a presentation. Okay, so for us, we have a very fantastic one. So I think this one is going to give a competition to merge. Yeah, so we have come up with a vegan conversation jiko, and whereby we are ready to give back to you the smoky githeri guilt-free, so you don't have to worry about the emissions. Okay, so I think that is one of the idea like everyone loves. So apart from tomatoes, so we can have a githeri back. So our idea, next slide, please. So from our trip yesterday, it was very encouraging to see like the smoke going up without having to worry about all the emission, the greenhouse gases. So it was very fun to see, like, for once you can see a smoke without having to worry about anything. So we connected that to GCOS. Now we have, everyone is saving on the amount of carbon to use. So we saw like, how about we save on the coal we are using, and at the same time, the little amount of carbon that we're producing, can we convert it to be safer for environment? So you don't have to worry about the small carbon that you're producing, and you can easily cook without having to worry that you have kids in an indoor that they're going to die of carbon monoxide. Because as we know from the research, 3 billion people cook on open fires, right? And from that 3 billion, we have 4.3 million of them that die from indoor pollution everywhere. So that one is minus what contributes to climate change. It's just by the fact that you're cooking with an open fire, you can be among the 4.3 million. So for us, the youth-led and women group, we are about to change that. So we are going to save all that, save our planet and save our people. So when it comes to technology, So our technology will allow to filter the carbon monoxide and emit the guilt-free smoke the carbon has already been eliminated. And so it will include two folds. So the first fold will be the filter, whereby we'll have the carbon molecular sieve and the converter, which will be the carbon molecular pellets. So the system also, now we are connecting also with the locals. So for the locals people, where they're coming in is providing with the cash crop trees. So we went with the fast growing bamboos because we also don't want to reduce our forest cover. So which will be reared by our local farmers for the specific purpose of creating charcoal. So, okay. So that is our high level professional illustration. Yeah, as you can see, it is very sophisticated. So at the below, we have the coal. So after the coal produces the fire, we have our first guard of defense. So we have the sieve. So the sieve is going to help with the sieving of the carbon monoxide. And then we have the pellets that are going to convert the already saved carbon monoxide to be the vegan smoke. So you no longer have to worry about what is going up there. So since your food will be between the pellets and the vegan smoke, now there is where the smoky githeri comes in, okay? So you don't have to lose the taste. But as you can see from the latest technology, everyone is bringing the smoky thing back, right? But there's still fear of what will happen to the greenhouse gases. So that is our GCO. As you can see, it is complicated, but not that complicated. But thanks to our team, it's going to make everything possible for you to be able to have all that and enjoy. So when it comes to our market, all of us know, even from yesterday, what we learned from Elizabeth and Eddie, everyone likes their GCO, right? Yeah, and everyone likes their low-cost food. So when we combine the two, our vegan GCO come in handy, not only for the bachelors, but for everyone else, right? Yeah, now you can cook your githeri at home without having to worry about the amount of the fuel or what you're going to use. So you don't have to buy those for at the road for you to enjoy your good githeri. So, okay. No, just stop working.
Hold it, press once and wait.
Okay. So on finances, so we are targeting government and private sector. So for the government, what we would like help from them would be a tax exemption on all GCOs, sieve technology, and the cash crop trees. So, and also grants, definitely, because it is a startup. So we'd like grants from the government in form of startup capital. And then for our investors, we would like, it is our goal, we make sure that our user stakeholders, from what we learned also from Eddie's project, because the youth and the women are our target. So it will be great to have them as the bigger part of the shareholders, so that we are always in line. We make sure that we don't leave them out, because after all, we are making the GCO for them. And also we are, with our collaboration with our farmers who will be supplying with our tree cash crops, we also intend to use them as our marketing tool, because from one of the gaps that we learned again from Eddie's presentation yesterday was the problem with the awareness. So when we use the farmers, at least they'll be able to help us spread the news about our GCO, because they're the ones who are giving us the bamboos. And also when we go ahead, you'll see like, sorry. Oh, when you go to the society, you'll see that I'll go straight to connecting with the farmers. Like you see VCJ now, the vegan GCO would partner with the local chairmans to conduct live and dynamic research on the ground. So we'll take these GCOs to our farmers and do like a live demonstration to help them see like how they're supposed to use it. And then from that, we believe word of mouth is going to help us with marketing in that dimension. And also, as I've explained, you can see that there is a longevity of our technology, and then awareness will be spread to the local farmers from whom we will be sourcing our raw materials. And then awareness of the contribution of dirty jiko. So we also, all of us are walking away from the dirty jikos, right? So we have a point to come up with a clean jiko. So thanks to those of us who are ahead, who have already like tried to limit the amount of CO2 coming from the jiko. So we'll be now doing the final part of making sure whatever is coming out of the already limited jiko is safe for the environment and for the people using it. And then for the knowledge of the low-cost, guilt-free cooking technology that will allow Githeri to still have the smoky flavor. So as Emily said, the way she spent the office talking about energy, but goes home and do the opposite, at least now she'll have the freeness to go and like cook the Githeri without having to wonder like the small negative impact that she may be contributing to that. And also, as we have said about the 4.3 million people that suffer from indoor pollution. So jiko is a solution to the health implication. So other than that, now we're finished. So for me, I will not ask because I know already we have interested parties who would like to invest in our surprises. So we already have 3 officials. That is Iman, Elizabeth, and Crispus. There is their email. Feel free to write. We are ready for the meetings, okay? So unless you have any question, that is for our vegan jiko.
Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, Eddie has a question.
My question is, you want to conserve forest, and you are advising the community to use bamboo. Is considering the effects that bamboo brings along, why are you not considering bamboo as a forest?
Okay, Iman.
We understand that jikos are not just detrimental in terms of emission, but also in terms of using forests and trees to create the coal. So our solution, like she mentioned, I think on the second slide, our solution to that is to partner with local farmers to plant trees, specifically fast growing strands of bamboo that will specifically be bred and reared for charcoal burning. So we would not go into forests and cut down trees. We would give business to the local farmers for them to plant fast growing strands for us to use for our coal, which will also be emissions free.
Other questions?
Okay, Jabri.
Yeah, Prudence.
Maybe just a clarification.
Yeah.
On the diagram, I saw you had a space for coal. So I just wanted to confirm, is it charcoal or it's called?
Charcoal.
It's confusing.
Okay, charcoal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to follow on that question. So the charcoal, and Iman, you can help us as well. The charcoal is created separately from the jiko.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just a normal jiko, the way you take a jiko and you put charcoal and then you light it on fire and you use it to cook.
With the charcoal in
At the
jiko.
bottom, yes.
Okay.
You put the charcoal and then the pellets in the filter.
So, but then creating the charcoal also releases carbon, right?
Yes, we also have technology for that. So we thought of that because the trees, the biomass is usually buried and then, slowly with pressure and heat turn to coal. So we considered that, and we figured we would have technology to avert those emissions as well, because the creation of the fast sieve would be maybe a blood sieve. It's made of slight emissions. But then after that, we would use the same technology that is being used at home to produce the coal in the first place.
One last concern. Why would you use charcoal and pellets on the same jiko? Is it not expensive?
No.
Okay, let me say this. Because yesterday we talked about culture. We already know people are using these chicos. And burning, the government usually bans the use of charcoal. So this is just a way of making it easier. And it actually helps society be part of the solution. So now when we go to the community now, the pellets, these are carbon molecular pellets. So the sieve is there to hold them. So the pellets absorb the carbon. Yeah. That's the
And then
essence.
what becomes of the pellets? Where
Yeah.
do you make it? Where do you take it? What happens to the pellets?
We haven't reached there yet.
There's a hypothetical chemical reaction that would occur between the carbon and the pellets to create a harmless output, which is like the steam that came out of the Kengen. Yeah.
Like water.
Yeah, it's like very harmless. You could use it to direct to Jabri and his team's farm. Yeah.
Okay, Prudence has a question for comment.
I think mine is more of a comment, just to think about it, because we are trying to move to efficient ways of the cooking. So why would you want to encourage charcoal? Because the production itself is not efficient. So maybe you might just want to look at it in terms of, instead of charcoal, maybe you might want to go the briquette way. So yeah, just to spur up the discussion on the other side of our lunch.
Just to answer, the reason we decided charcoal is because charcoal is already being used. And when you go to our communities, yes, people are saying carbon is bad, but when you look at the people who are selling the githeris, the peanuts on the streets, they're using the charcoal. So we just said, okay, yes, it's because of culture, and it's not just a Kenyan problem, it's an African problem. Even at during break, people are talking about how they like using jikos and charcoal because it makes their food taste better. So because we can't sort the culture issue now, let's solve the carbon issue then.
Okay, your time has run out, and I'm going to refer you to the compendium. Because the compendium has articles on the price of stoves, which will be relevant to what you're talking about. And also an article that had the working title of, "Is biomass here to stay?" In fact, I think the title ended up being the positive. Biomass is here to stay, which kind of reinforces your instincts here.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
I just have one question left on this side.
Okay,
Yeah,
last one.
so I just want to ask, what makes the jiko vegan? And if you cook nyama choma on the jiko, is it still vegan?
What makes it vegan was like, okay, there's the idea that took us, you know how we have those cookies that you can eat and not get fat? Right? So like we can cook with that thing and still not get the carbon monoxide. So that is where our vegan terms comes in.
So the Nyama Choma crowd may ask for a different name for this business.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting idea. So. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, now, how many people were not here for our opening musical ceremony? Joachim, Nixon, Elizabeth, Muthoni, Samuel? Right. Now, we have about 5 minutes for our next speaker. And what each of you has to do is get up and say your name and maybe an affiliation. And then you have to give us a sound. Now, everybody else who gave us a sound gave us animals and wind and all sorts of things that were natural world. But because we called this, when we combined it all, the energy orchestra, we are asking all the newcomers to stand up, give your name, maybe an affiliation, and then give us an energy sound. And we won't have time. We might have, maybe we can do that. And then we will have we'll try and combine all the sounds from the first day with the energy sounds from today. And we'll have a 1-minute fabulous performance of the energy orchestra. So I don't know who wants to go first with an energy sound. Nixon, you're here.
I serve there as a senior program officer in charge of digital agriculture and solutions. Sound. the thermal energy that we saw.
Geothermal steam.
Thermal
Yeah. Okay, who wants to go next? Yeah, Joachim.
Hello. Hi, I can go next. My name is Joachim Paul. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm the office director of the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Nairobi. So my colleagues here, Fred and Elizabeth also. I didn't know, Elizabeth, that you would be here, but I'm very positively surprised by it. And I'm glad to meet you all and happy to be here. Unfortunately, I could not come on the opening on the first day. Now the sound. I'll try to make a sound, which is, I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, that's good.
Which is exactly this thing over there, the wind turbine.
Yeah.
And where I come from, in the northern part of Germany, we have a lot of those all over, which is like the flat northern coast. We have a lot of those. And just as a comment, so the new German government, which I think will be voted in power today in the German parliament, put in their political program to increase renewables up to 70% by something around 2030.
Okay.
I think even earlier.
Yeah.
So don't quote me on the number of years.
Okay.
We are currently at 52 or something.
Yeah.
So in a few years.
Okay.
Yep. That's why I choose the German.
And our next speaker has a sharp stop at 12. Okay, so we'll continue this after our speaker because she has a hard stop at 12. Because the Energy Orchestra, I can promise you newcomers, it's really fun.
Good morning, everyone. I want to introduce our next speaker. And before I do, AFDB, I think you can see there are a lot of innovation ideas that are here. So they are going to reach out to you. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Rebecca Shile. Dr. Rebecca is a Director of Research, Data, and Innovation at the World Resource Institute Africa. And she's going to be making a presentation on our retreat theme, which is barriers to the uptake of renewable energies, and also mention on how research knowledge that they generate at the WRI can be implemented towards policy change, effective innovation, and behavior change. Welcome, Dr. Rebecca.
Hi, Emily, good to see you. Thank you for inviting me, and pleasure to see everyone, and apologies that I wasn't able to be there in person with the team. I'm on the WhatsApp though, and I see that you guys are having a great time, and I hope that it continues to be a very good time for you all. So Emily, would you prefer that I just sort of talk, or would you like me to do a more formal presentation style? What's the flow of the morning so far?
You can go with a talk. If you have a presentation, you can also show. It will depend on you.
Okay, I can put up some slides. So you should be able to see that now. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll just leave them. I won't do full screen mode so I can jump back and forth between them. Good, so I understand that, Emily, that you'd like me to chat a bit about barriers to renewables uptake in Kenya or in East Africa more broadly. And I think what I'll do is, and I'm sure that this is a very energy savvy audience, so probably don't have to do too much convincing on why this is a topic to talk about. But what I'll do is I'll just say a little bit about where our energy landscape is at the moment. And then I will talk about three broad groupings of renewables. The lowest level, the sort of the last mile energy access level. I'll talk about commercial and industrial solar, and then I'll talk about utility solar. I'll try to just be maybe 10 minutes and then leave the rest of the time for some Q&A from your audience, because I will have a stop at 12. But suffice to say that, of course, we know about the challenge of electricity access across the continent. You can see here a graphic. This is data from Africa Portal from 2020 showing that access to, yes?
Just to interrupt you, we can only see half of your screen. Is it possible to do it on slide and then you can jump in and out as you go?
You can only see half the screen.
That's okay.
That is okay.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So yeah, so this is a graph that's showing us access to electricity across the continent from Africa Portal. And you can see where most of the continent is in that those bottom two brackets, right? 0 to 35 and the 36 to 54. So most countries with less than half of the population with access to electricity. And that gets more stark when you look at the difference between rural and urban electricity access. And for many of those countries that might have higher access, when you look at the rural access rates, they tend to be quite low. Another graphic to look at is one that paints the picture of our energy infrastructure. Let me expand this a bit. Of our energy infrastructure. So you can't read any of the names on this graph, I'm well aware, but these are looking at access to electricity by country, and you can see it's going in ascending order. And if you just take a look at the red bar that I've mapped out for you there, sub-Saharan Africa, you can see where we're standing at about 30% on average in 2000, and then we're just at 40% in 2016. So that's kind of mapping to the map that we looked at in the previous slide. So we know that access is low, and we ask the question, well, why is it so low? If we take a look at our actual energy infrastructure, what we find is that unlike other spheres of infrastructural development, digital technology, telecommunications, water and sanitation, what we've seen is that in energy, our infrastructure has changed very little in the past 40 years across the continent. So we still have quite a low installed capacity, 96 gigawatts as of 2015, and about half of that coming from South Africa alone. So the rest of the continent, really very limited installed capacity. Not only is there low installed capacity, but average energy consumption, of course, tends to be quite low. So we're looking at about half a megawatt hour per year for the average person across the continent. That's not even the average fridge in America, right? So we have entire households that are using less than appliances in other parts of the world. And that's not to say that we need to be consuming as much as others are, but from a point of view of a utility, it's very difficult to recoup the cost of your investments when consumption is so low. In addition, we also have very low utilization of power. So that's the second graph, the one that's more in blue with the yellow in the middle. And there again, this is now looking at capacity utilization across the continent. And I know you can't read the names, but the bar to look at is the red bar that I've mapped out for you. That's the sub-Saharan Africa average, standing at 40%. 40% utilization, what does that mean? That basically out of all of the power that we do have, the generation capacity that we do have installed, as little as it is, we're only using 40% of that. So half of it is going unused. And this is due to challenges around commercial and technical losses, as well as, you know, all of you here in Kenya would be very well aware of what's going on in the news with KPLC and understanding the challenges of running a utility. So altogether, these put us in a challenging situation where we have low consumption, and then it's difficult to build out the infrastructure to reach consumers. And then when you are able to reach consumers, as I mentioned, again, the consumption is low. And so you're sort of in a virtuous cycle that makes it difficult to reach communities and to have a sufficient level of consumption that offsets the costs of serving those customers. So from a technical point of view, those are some of the challenges that we're facing. And those are not uniquely African challenges, let me just add. Of course, you may be familiar with the history of electrification in some of our northern counterparts. So we look at electrification in the US or electrification in the UK and Europe, and there are in the US, we reached full universal electrification by the 1950s, 1960s. So a full 70-year history of complete universal electricity access. That didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen without challenges. There were major subsidies to municipal cooperatives and other companies to actually build out electrification infrastructure to reach far rural communities. I just say that to say that these are not uniquely African challenges. In some cases, there are, though, there is a challenge that because of where we're starting from and because of the lack of access to finance for investment, those challenges then do become unique to the continent, given the progress that others have been able to make. So I just wanted to lay that groundwork. Let me see what's the next one. We talked about this a little bit, sort of the utility challenges and utility struggles. Let me say a little bit about those three groupings that I mentioned before. This is a graphic from the International Energy Agency, which is showing us that even given the challenges that we've just laid out across the continent of delivering access, what we see is that demand potential growth is very large, primarily emerging from middle class, urban communities, and productive use sectors. And actually, when you look at the modeling that comes out of the International Energy Agency, what is projected is that by 2040, PV could become the second largest generation source across the entire continent. That would be supplemented by wind, by hydro, and by, as you can see here, by natural gas and so on. So these are IEA projections, just showing the immense potential that renewables have to really dominate the electricity fuel mix. So why are we not able to leverage, or where are we struggling to leverage that potential that the IEA is telling us that we have? Let's take it in three chunks, look at each of these three sectors in consecutive order. So first, let's look at off-grid solar demand. And this has really been growing very rapidly across the continent. You can see here on the left-hand side, this is looking at pico solar sales across the continent. This is data from Gogla, showing us that sales have been going, are very high, but have been decreasing slightly over the course of the past couple of years. You can see that slight decline from 2016 into 2018. Here I'm just showing you an example for those who might not be familiar with. When we say pico products, we mean not the solar home systems, but rather the smaller lanterns and so on. Many of you might have these in your house. Some of you might have brought these with you to Naivasha. So we're seeing a steady, we're seeing sort of a plateau of pico unit sales. In addition to pico unit, however, we're seeing now this is supposed to come out. Yeah. So we're seeing here solar home system sales for the larger, these are larger units now that we're looking at here on the right-hand side. You can see this is where the growth has been, 43% increase between 2016, 2018. The latest figures from Gogla just came out earlier this year. And again, major increase ahead in comparison to 2018. So we're seeing a lot of uptake in these larger solar home systems that can service productive uses. What do we mean by that? These types that can allow you to run your bulbs, but also your TV, your fan, your laptops, your phone, and so on. We're seeing a lot of uptake now in the productive use space for solar. So we have solar mills, solar fruit dryers. We have, of course, you're all familiar with the solar water pumps. So there are many different there's now, I would say, probably hundreds of small startups or medium-sized SMEs that are servicing these markets for solar-powered home appliances, as well as productive use and commercial appliances. Some of the challenges, however, for further expansion of this particular segment is affordability. And so even where sales are continuing to expand, one of the challenges of the sector is trying to grapple with our default rates. And so even when a customer is able to afford somehow the upfront cost of these types of technologies, are they able to continue payments for the 2 years of their lease period? are they able to actually then upgrade to a larger appliance and so on, a larger solar home system and so on. So affordability tends to be a challenge, and companies tend to be a bit lipped about what those default rates actually look like. But some of the latest data coming out of Acumen does show that affordability is a challenge, and that sometimes customers can actually become more debt burdened than less debt burdened by taking on these types of appliances. So that's one issue that we really have to address. And as a group, as a group like the Energy Reference Group, with so much expertise, a conversation around affordability challenges and customer side subsidies, customer side interventions would be really excellent. So that's one topic. The next I want to speak to really briefly is on, I'll skip over mini grids. I think that's a bit more complicated. The next I wanted to talk about was commercial and industrial solar. This is now a really, really fantastic space to watch. Some of you might even be working in this space who are in the room. What we're seeing here is now, while the off-grid space has been, I think, active and really taken off in the past, say, 10 to 15 years, CNI really the last 5 years has seen a dramatic change. We're seeing a lot of companies now within this, even if we just take Kenya as an example, a lot of companies stepping into this space to service not the smaller mom and pop or duka type commercial needs, but the needs of businesses, small factories, and small manufacturing, like manufacturing, that kind of thing. So stepping into that now multi-megawatt space, or half a megawatt upwards. We're starting to see more, I would actually say 100 kilowatts upwards. We're starting to see more companies playing in that space, which is great. And now I think as of last year, we have about 50 megawatts of commercial and industrial solar installed across Kenya. That's just for Kenya alone, which is multiples of what it was, as I mentioned, even just 5 years before. This is a really fantastic space that's evolving. Why? Because a lot of customers, commercial customers, are sort of challenged with the quality of service and the cost of service that they're getting from the incumbent utility. And so they're defecting from grid into these either to these standalone or to these grid tied solutions. Now, what are some of the challenges there? Because that sounds like great, well, wonderful space, always good for there to be competition. There's actually a benefit to the utility of having a reserve of or a segment of the market being served by solar that actually allows it to use its resources more efficiently, to shave when it's reaching peaks in the middle of the day and so on. So there's wins all around. Why are we not seeing further expansion in this space? Some of these are what we're looking at on this slide is just some news clippings that I'm collecting the news every day on what's going on in this issue. And you can see here from these headlines, you can see some of the challenges are around the perception of CNI solar from a grid point of view. And so we're actually starting to see now, a bit of a standoff, if you will, between the utility and these commercial and industrial players. And so that really does limit the further growth of this space. I think the financier, I would not say is the issue. We actually do have financiers. We have a lot of even the local banks like Co-op and Equity are getting involved in the CNI space and want to be serving this space. The challenges here are more around the political economy and the institutional perceptions of opportunity from CNI growth. Again, this is a research talk, so this is another brilliant area for research. Understanding what exactly are the value adds to a utility, whether we're talking about KPLC or Umeme or Tanesco, whoever we're talking about, what are the actual value adds technically to a utility from having a sizable commercial and industrial renewables space. There might be ancillary services to the grid that are not being calculated or thought about in the economics of the utility. And we don't really have good numbers on that right now, to be honest, for Kenya. So I know there's a couple of researchers at Strathmore who are really excited about this area where we're growing a bit of a research project there. But that's one area where research can be really helpful, is in changing the way that the conversation happens, and the language that's being used is bringing into this space evidence about what some of the benefits and the trade-offs would be. And the last I will talk about quickly is just now at the largest scale, at the utility, we call this the utility or large scale renewables. And we know, as we saw from that graphic from IEA, that there's lots of potential across the continent. Nobody has to convince us of that. Why are we not seeing the expansion? What are the barriers? The Energy Reference Group held a brilliant webinar a few months ago about the East Africa Power Pool, which is starting to see a bit of a resurgence now in terms of activity, which is really excellent. Because one of the challenges around utility scale solar comes back to the challenges that we mentioned all the way at the beginning of the talk around consumption and the economics of these projects. So how would a project of this size recoup all of its costs when you have such limited consumption currently online? Power pooling would be one brilliant way to help ease that challenge, because then we're sharing our resources, not just within one country and trying to find off-takers within one country, but sharing those resources across the region, as you can see here. Another big challenge, aside from consumption, is around mobilizing investment. This, I would say, is probably the biggest challenge for utility scale solar, where we understand what the costs are going to be, but there are, whether you want to talk about risk perceptions, that then cascades into higher costs of capital. And if the costs of securing capital are higher, then the cost of the project are going to be higher, which then also makes it harder to secure investment. And so breaking out of this cycle for mobilizing investment at the utility scale is another area of, where lots of work is needed. And at WRI, this is one of our focuses. We're actually doing work right now on developing a roadmap to scaling investment in solar across the continent with a specific focus on East Africa. So I'm going to stop there, Emily. I've thrown a lot of data and a lot of graphs at you very quickly, but I just wanted to see the conversation about both from the off-grid space, in the CNI space, and in the utility scale space. What are we seeing as some of the barriers to renewables expansion, and what are some of the entry points for a group like the Energy Reference Group and all of the researchers that are there today to dig in? So I'm going to stop there, Emily, and I'll also stop sharing the slides.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca, for that presentation and bringing a broader perspective to the barriers that we've been talking about the whole week. I would like to invite the room, maybe if you have questions or answers. We can have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then I'll invite Percy to have comments from the virtual representatives come through. Any question, comments? Fred.
Thank you. My name is Frederick with Heinrich Ball Foundation. I have 2 questions. They could be related or not, but one is on solar. There have been promised over the years that solar prices will come down. I don't know what, in your field, what you see these as a projection in the coming years, because majority of investors, if you ask them, also institutions who want to establish a solar system in their houses or in their institutions still find these as costly. In your field, what would you view as a projection in the coming years? The second question, quite off or not related, but also the discussions that have been happening globally and also in Kenya in the last 2 weeks or 1 month is about nuclear as a source of energy, and also as a way to address carbon emissions. I don't know if you have any view on that in regards to whether the debate as they are, and whether this is something that could be adopted in the region we are in. Thank you.
One more question, and then we can go to remarks from her. Jasper.
Thank you very much. I'm Jasper Duor, a consultant. You raised an issue of Kenya Power resisting the use of solar. Are you implying that within the existing frameworks, they have power and authority to effectively resist?
Okay, you can go ahead and make remarks to those.
Great. Let me take those questions one by one. So brilliant. Actually, all three of them are really, really excellent questions. Let me see. I'm going to put up a slide if I can to answer the first one. I can't find it. Okay, I had a slide that had things mapped out nicely, but it's okay. So I think great question. The challenge is that what determines the cost of solar is not just the generation cost. So the generation cost, the cost of panels has been coming down very quickly. We're now at less than $1 a watt. Everybody is very well aware of that, but there's other things that add into the cost of your system, right? So there's the balance of systems. So if there's going to be storage, there is then, the cost of forex. There is the cost of capital itself, as I mentioned before. And so all of those things layer into the cost of running a solar project, whether as a homeowner or as a commercial entity in Kenya, and cause the cost to be a bit higher. What we're seeing from customers of the commercial and industrial space so far is that they're still seeing some cost saving. It's not significant. It's something around, I think the last figures I was seeing is like 20 to 30%. So sizable, but not like you're saving half of your electricity cost by switching to solar. But those costs hopefully would be able to come down if there were some incentives in place. Incentives such as feed-in tariff or net metering. And this is actually what we were going to be talking about today, but I won't get too far into that because I know the Energy Reference Group is going to have another session later on about the benefits of incentives for customer side solar. On your question about nuclear, I think that conversation has changed a lot in the past 10 years. When I was studying, we were talking about nuclear in a different way. Now there's the conversation around small modular reactors, SMRs, and so on. And so I think the conversation has changed. I haven't seen any really good studies about the potential for sub-Saharan Africa. When you look at whether you look at IRENA, IEA, even the Africa Energy Chamber, the focus tends to be on other technologies that we either already have a foot in the door and have some infrastructural base in, or the costs would be significantly low enough for us to explore. So I can't really speak so much to who might be, or what country or what region is most exploring nuclear in a real way. And then to Jasper's question, which is a great one, and it kind of relates to the question that was asked by the person before, which is to say that the question is whether or not, I think the question was if the utility has the agency to resist or not resist solar. And that's less the way that I think about it, and more think about it as an ecosystem of players. So you've got your utility, but you also have your regulator. You have the ministry, you have industry associations, and there's an entire ecosystem of players that are engaged in this. And what we do know is that there was, for instance, the net metering program that was going to be available, or that was previously available to small capacity plants, but it left the net metering program as it was implemented, left many self-generators ineligible because of where the cap was. Likewise, I believe there is currently a feed-in tariff either on the table or being discussed. But given the level of the feed-in tariff, it's only available to plants that would be larger than, say, 500 kilowatts, which again disqualifies many of the self-generators. So it's not so much the institutions themselves, but the policies that would hinder C&I solar from growing. And that then, of course, has implications for energy access and renewable energy expansion, not just in Kenya, but across the region. So it's less about a utility saying, I'm going to defend or guard against, and more about, how progressive are the policies that create an enabling environment and a space for things like CNI solar to flourish.
Thank you, Rebecca. Percy, I see that we have a question from our virtual audience and maybe a comment. Okay, I can't read.
Yes, hi everybody. Okay. Can you hear me? I hope you can. Yes. So we don't have any questions at the moment, but thank you so much, Rebecca, for that presentation and for the questions that have come in. However, we have some comments that I probably want to bring to your attention. So we have Shamiso, who says, I agree with Rebecca, green energy such as biomass and solar is always too expensive, especially for rural communities to set up. They're already living on $1 per day. How best can they be assisted in setting up systems that can cost them over $1,000 to set up? And then he or she further says that a 4 cubic biogas system costs about $1,500 to set up. It will need to be fed with cow dung almost daily. So that is a comment that maybe you might want to react to. There is a second one that says, most solar batteries are dead by the third year. I guess he or she meant second to third year. And one has to continually invest all the time in, invest all the time in buying new batteries. How can we make green energy more attractive to marginalized communities? There wasn't a question mark, but I suspect this is the question for you, Rebecca. Thanks, Emily.
You can go ahead, Rebecca. And
great, thanks. Yes, I fully agree with Shamiso, and she laid out the math so well in the chat, right, about how expensive it actually is. And I know that we tend to talk about off-grid technologies as such a sort of an obvious solution to solving energy access, but it's really not. And these issues around customer affordability tend to fall off the agenda, but they're actually quite crucial. So I'm very, very much agreed with Samisho. This was some of our research when I was formerly at Power4. I was looking at trying to lobby for more support from donors on customer side interventions. And actually in the past, I would say 3 years, the sector has shifted its language a bit, whereas you might, I don't know if is anybody from Gogla in the room, the Global Off-Grid Lighting Association? No? Okay, well, so Gogla, the industry representatives for off-grid actually have changed their language, even just in the past 3 years, starting to now advocate for more customer-side subsidies, whereas before, the language was really about subsidize us as the company and trust us to get those cost savings down to the customer. The language is changing now, and we're actually seeing more interventions from donors to get money directly to customers to then make their energy choices. So slow progress, but at least this issue of customer side intervention is becoming part of the conversation, which it wasn't so much before. And then the other comment you said was on batteries. How can we make green energy more attractive to marginalized communities? I have some thoughts on this. It's a very brilliant question. And part of the challenge is around seeing it less as a binary relationship between an energy service provider and a customer, and seeing it more as an ecosystem of players. Why do I say that? That sounds all fluffy and foo-foo, right? But why do I say that? Because actually, if you think about commercial operators, like for instance, an egg incubator, honey processors, millers, grinders, there's so many different commercial off-takers from an agro-processing point of view. That could leverage, that could act as anchor clients for something like a mini grid company. And that actually is the major relationship. If there's an anchor client that can actually make the economics of delivering power such that it makes sense, it's viable for something like a mini grid operator, then serving those customers, the households who are going to be using very marginal amounts of power, actually becomes more of a byproduct rather than their main goal. And so figuring out these sort of ecosystems village by village, cluster by cluster of how we can find viable anchor clients, anchor customers that sit alongside and act as the primary off-taker for power, then sort of changes the equation, it changes the dynamics later on. The challenge is that that's not something that you can scale very easily. It means understanding each community. It means understanding what is being grown, what is being produced, where are the markets, and community by community creating this network. So this is some of the things that mini grids are hard at work, mini grid companies are hard at work at now. We just launched a mini grid in Uganda with Umeme, the local utility, looking specifically at this issue of productive use in a district just outside of Kampala. And it's slow progress because you have to do it one by one. So that's the issue there, is just, it's not as, you can't just say, this is the magic solution and then we scale. Scale is not so easy when we have to do things and understand communities to create those ecosystems. So, but that, I hope that answers your question, Samisha, of how green energy could actually become more attractive and more available, more affordable to marginalized communities.
Thank you, Rebecca. I wonder if we can squeeze in just 2 more questions. Emily, let me know if this is fine.
No, in the interest of time, we are running behind time. We'll send the questions to Rebecca and then she can send in her remarks and then we can send them to whoever asked and spread around. So I want
Emily, also they're online. So Rebecca, maybe if you can just plug into the Q&A segment online. A written response would be appreciated.
Okay, so I go to your stream. Okay.
Yes,
I will do that. And I've just put in my Twitter so people can continue the conversation if you want to ask me questions there or send questions. I'm happy to. I wish we had more time. I love these questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Rebecca. And we'll have you back for another forum at a later date. For now, thank you so much for joining us and thank you for making your presentation. And we wish for you to join us in the afternoon session as we're doing the launch of the Energy for What publication. So you're welcome. Thank you. I would like to take this back to Barbara for the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, my apologies for interrupting you, Rebecca and Passy. We have one more presentation from our group, I think, because I'd like us to try and go to lunch at 12:30. And yeah, can we have the last one? Is that you, Chris? No. Paul, is that you doing it? And then we'll close with the last of the Energy Orchestra and have lunch.
I think I should remove this. This is the last presentation, the 4th, done by the 3rd group. And yesterday we took a visit to Olkaria. In the systems thinking, we were to link an entrepreneurial aspect with the visit to Olkaria. In this group, our model, I think our entrepreneurial thing that we came to our mind was centered around the spa, but we wanted to change tact. Geothermal spa owned by the communities. Geothermal spa that is not centered on the big capital, by the big players. We want to have geothermal resources being brought down to be relevant with the communities, with the energy pool. So in this aspect, it's not about the company generating electricity running a spa. We're talking about how do the communities that live around this resource get to utilize this. Someone direct me how I'm changing this. Yeah. to what direction? Yeah, you can do that, Barbara. Thank you. Of course, we have a picture of the spa, and pardon me, we have a picture of the spa. But down below, you'll see women doing ushanga. You'll see a greenhouse and a splash of milk that you will take at the milk bar when you visit the geothermal spa. So the model is about utilizing the steam. Currently, steam is utilized by power generating companies. We are yet to see policies, frameworks, and incorporation, even down to the integrated development plans in our counties, where we give special groups. We do, the companies that generate electricity, we do not have policies and frameworks that encourages steam sharing agreements. They're only limited to power generators and IPPs. But steam can be used in what we refer to as direct usages. And maybe just to go to the next slide, whoever is doing that for me has left now. We want to bring the linkages between the entrepreneurship, the aspects of policy and society, and of course, market and finance. But it is very glaring, like I've just mentioned, that when it comes to policy, there's lack of strategy and regulations that are specific to direct usages of geothermal. Direct use means usages that are alternative, apart from generation of electricity. Same thing on policy still, there is no specific regulations on community support programs. So there are entities, the company comes and sets up, does drilling, sets up geothermal power plant, but there are no regulations on how they are going to share and use this steam for alternative usages. When it comes to the aspect of financing, in our group, we have one of the financiers with us. It was a privilege to have Modoni with us. But from her perspective and experience, I think we are talking about the capital capabilities of these groups. Okay, we are looking at risks that are involved in funding. There are high risks, particularly on novel ventures. The local institutions, banking institutions, may not be free to work with this, because when you look at the assets that are being owned by these communities groups, the LKD1 group, they're actually very minimal, and they find it hard to partner to access funding and financing. And of course, consider the aspect of high risks when it comes to ventures that are related to geothermal. So the communities are also exposed. When it comes to aspect of market, yes, there is a market. When we're looking at the geothermal tourism, I want us to zero in on geothermal tourism. Most of the time we will visit to see the plant. Students will come in to study human and maybe physical geography, because the combination is a critical combination of both human and geography. When we talk about geothermal tourism, it's a big sector that has a lot of potential. It has not been tapped completely. But when we walk into LKD1, we want to improve the aspect which are beyond social and economic. It's not about going and swimming in the spa. It's about going to this group and also benefiting from other livelihood improvement projects that are alongside. In this spa, we have a pasteurization program, okay? From the same heat, the women group are collecting milk from the local communities, doing pasteurization and selling in the milk bar. On the one side of this group, we are seeing women having greenhouses, perhaps for vegetables and fruits. And this is some of the aspects that we are looking at, how to improve the diet and nutrition, maternal and child health of the pastoralist communities who hardly get vegetables on their tables. Apart from that, we could also, because we are thinking pastoralism, we could get cattle dip that is specifically used for animal husbandry. This one is happening in northern parts of Kenya and also happening in Middle East. where animals get deep on geothermal waters to eradicate ticks. It improves the husbandry. So we are looking at a different group of usages that is directed on pastoral communities, right? But when you come into the spa, because the spa that will bring in the tourists, they get to benefit from other benefits, which go beyond business, but also into health and maternal and child issues. When you look at the society, there's lack of awareness, particularly knowledge on direct use. There is lack of technology. Most of the technologies used today for the projects are actually local innovations. Honey processing, for instance, we do not have direct use technology available to process honey. Honey is about heating. Milk is about pasteurization, about 60 degrees Celsius. To heat the pools and the spas, I was looking at a comparison at how much we are saving. When you're using gas, for instance, or electric pumps, you'll use about $2,300 to heat your pool. But when thinking about geothermal, where it is available around the clock. So those are some of the costs when you look at it keenly on how much they're saving. But the communities do not have this knowledge on how they can utilize, all right? And lastly, I think there's also the aspect of tokenism, that communities rely so much on what they are given rather than what they would wish, or them proposing what they want to get. So a company will come in, a company generating steam, and they'll talk about, we will paint your classrooms, give you exercise books, buy uniforms for your kids, we'll provide drinking water. I think is a contradiction to the existing departments of government that are already providing these services. If I'm generating steam, I have a well, 5 megawatts. How about donating a megawatt to the community for this direct use? Some of the wells are not doing well. How about donating steam and having agreements? So who is advantaged today as we speak? Those who are running industrial parks already have a rate of about 2.3 Kenya shillings per kilowatt hour. But for the local communities, they are not aware that such opportunities exist. But if they come in forms of self-help groups, it will be very easy to trade with the government entities. But if it is a private, you'll be exposed to a competitive world of tendering. And of course, it will shut off the communities. But what we are saying, the community lacks the awareness, but the possibilities are there to eradicate tokenism. Just to move to the next slide. Are we talking of more opportunities already related to the spa alone? Yes, there are more opportunities. Think about hide and skin and the treatment, extraction of CO2. Think about aloe vera, farming, extraction, and processing. Think about abattoirs. When you want to have an abattoir, you need heat and water. This is what you get from the geothermal wells. For more readings, those who can Google, look for a writing by one Paul Lomeri, who's also presenting here, on livestock, herders, and steam, sustainable applications of geothermal. Just Google livestock, herders, and steam. There are a lot of opportunities on how the pastoralist communities can use steam. When you talk about geothermal steam, you're talking about heat. You're talking about absorption cooling that you get from the heat. You're talking about water, and we're talking about brine and the gases that are emitted. There are many opportunities that can be utilized around this group, LK1. There are many opportunities. Next slide. So what needs to be done? Policy, framework. And then we have to come down, particularly to the integrated plans at the grassroots level, so that the awareness comes from the community, so that communities know what they want, right? We need to create more awareness, capacity building, of course, to eradicate tokenism. If they are working with the companies, they come to the table to negotiate on an informed level. The communities will change their needs so that when a drilling company comes around, they'll not ask for water. The same needs they continue asking for Department of Water in a given county. It's all about knowledge. Of course, they need to innovate more on appropriate homegrown technologies, particularly that are related to direct use. And of course, they need to capitalize on mobile money and e-marketing for tourism and sales. Next. Ashe Oleng is thank you in Maasai. Next. There's no next. Thank you.
minutes for questions, clarifications, any comments? And then we'll do a quick round of orchestra making and go to lunch and set up the launch. And I also want to thank the online participants who've been here. Thank you. I want to thank the online participants who've joined us today, and please stick around. Also, I know, Crispus, we talked about possibly nominating an online participant to join the Energy Orchestra. Is that still a possibility?
Possibly.
Okay. Give me a hands up if you think you can make that happen. And in the meantime, we'll collect the other energy sounds.
Okay.
Yeah, questions, comments?
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
That's a very good presentation.
Thank you.
My question is the utilities looking at having a policy around direct use, or is it limited to the philanthropy of those of the well owners? Is there something be done by the utilities of government to streamline or mainstream these kind of innovations or utilizations? Because I think they can add a lot of value and also grow the economies and improve the livelihoods of the communities around these wells.
Thank you. A very important question. This is what we deliberated for some time. And before we came up with the term tokenism, we were talking about greed, right? The companies want to get their way out, the most cheap way out. They will always advance corporate social responsibility around initiatives that are easy and affordable. But when you look at companies that are making about 10 billion in a year, doing a project worth 1 million, you're not even giving to that community. But remember all the CSR activities. Remember in our presentation, we are referring to community support programs. These are long-term, more sustainable, more than the CSR. Philanthropy is about CSR. It's more humanitarian, short-term, quick fix. But community support program is when a drilling company goes into agreement with the IPP, such framework should also exist for the communities, so that if they have 20 years to supply and maintain, supply steam and maintain a well, they go into an agreement, a steam sharing agreement with a community group, right? People will look at the cost. Yesterday we were told it takes about $6 million USD to get a well running, but a portion of it can be used for longevity with that community. I know this will assure a lot of community buy-in, social license, and maybe people can maybe get back, transition into better livelihoods, okay? That can eradicate the negative impact that is brought in by the project. But yes, the question is, does it even exist in the first place? It does not exist because most of the projects and CSR projects are not initiated by the companies. It is out of the engagement and participation by the communities with the company where needs are prioritized. Okay, and then it depends on the model. But a case study of Kenyan drilling companies, particularly geothermal companies, most CSR are based on education, health, and water. Right? So most of the needs will come from the community engagements. What are their priorities? But look at this way. This is the communities that are misdirecting their needs because of lack of awareness. Yes, they need water. Yes, they need to be supported in business. But they will easily ask for loans rather than getting opportunities to process their earning and add value. Okay? So it depends on the priorities. And the companies, because of greed, they'll say, what do you want? We want water. And they'll provide water. Okay? It is easy to do that. After some point, they'll partner with the county government, the departments of water and the municipalities. In the long run, they're paying very little for water, but they're not utilizing this thing. So there's an initiative that has to come from both sides. But when the communities demand for this, the companies, of course, I know may run away with it because it will bring instant and satisfying transformations. Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, Martin.
Thanks, Paul. That was an interesting presentation. I think I see very many opportunities for collaboration with merge enterprises. And yeah, we can, if we come together, we might be able to enthuse AGRA enough as a consortium to get access to their funds. One thing I'm just wondering about is the catchment area, right? And I do see why it would be very nice for the community, especially the community that has been resettled, to also participate so that it doesn't appear as if they were just thrown out of their original homes and then settled there to fend for themselves, try to create new, livelihood systems. And so I do see the utility of having such a venture. But would this be, what is the size of the catchment, the population that we would target with this SPA? And secondly, do we know whether Kengen and the KWS would be quite receptive of this idea, and whether they would be concerned about the ecosystem damage this kind of tourism would bring to the ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Those are some of the issues. Of course, I did not present on them to save on time. But when you look at the markets, we also ventured into who are the competitors. The competitors in utilization of steam is the steam generating companies. Kengen has already done a SPA in Olkaria. They have the capability and the muscle to market. But what is unique in LK1 SPA? It is an eco SPA. Everything local in thinking and construction, but it's not compromising on luxury and comfort. And that is the catch. So this is a community initiative. This is the melting pot of the Maasai culture. This is where you can visit the Maasai homes. I think in addition, when you look at the resettlement of these communities, they were settled outside the geothermal blocks. But it is also important to note that some of the geothermal blocks are not the entire land per se, but the specific points of operation. In Baringo Silali block, the company compensates for leeway, wayleaf, that is the roads, and the specific pads where they're working on. But even in Kengen, you realized yesterday that community animals are allowed to graze. And this is something that is very unique with the geothermal. They do not take the entire block and lock the communities out. I want us to come back to the aspect of community land, which we tend to think about community ownership. It is about community utilization. And so when we're doing these negotiations, the community groups are doing negotiations, the land, parts of the land within the block can be utilized. Why am I saying this? Anything above 10 kilometers or 50, depending on the enthalpy and the heat of the steam, there are a lot of losses if the project is done away from within. So their land belongs to the communities. In the negotiations, part of the land are left. We're talking about ritual sites, sites of heritage. So even if there is an arrangement within the Hell's Gate Park, there's always a negotiation away. Even on the lands that they were sent out from, they can retain a portion for this project. Because this project has to be done in partnership. The technology and expertise on steam and the management of steam is from the companies. Okay? So I don't think it will lock them out. One thing, the beauty about geothermal is the community can still utilize land for pasture, okay? As much as drilling is ongoing.
I'm gonna.
The last.
Oh, is there one more? Sorry, yeah, Samuel.
It's just a brief comment because the idea they have shared is good. And it's not only within geothermal areas, even in Lake Bogoria, the natural hot springs,
are being used, directly for, the swimming and in the swimming pools. And for the geothermal, the central field, they have been talking about the use of it for soil fumigation and other agricultural activities. And even as we were exiting, he showed us where they were condensing.
Condensation,
Yeah,
yes.
condensation, so
On
that
the
they can,
fumes.
so that they can use it for water. So I think his aspect had the idea of whatever is going to be done, the community is not going to benefit, simply like give and take. They are part and parcel. It's like a partnership, because if you have the spa, if you're investing in the spa, we are the souvenir shop that has whatever is going to be sold belongs to the community. So I think the milk will be coming from the community. There would be no way we would get the milk from geothermal. So I think his was an idea of partnership that, brings the two stakeholders on board with long-term benefits, rather than you're resettled, get this and go find something else to do. So I think from my perspective, that's what I've understood. And it's happening even in Lake Bogoria.
You're right. Special thanks to Lynn, Modoni, and Prudence. My name is Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All right. I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit draconian in timekeeping, because we have our big launch of the Energy Compendium this afternoon. And Emily is being very strict with me. So I'd like to take a quick 10 minutes for the last introductions and the Energy Orchestra. And I understand that Pasia Mayo has volunteered herself to represent the online community. Is that right, Crispus?
Actually, it's Arthur that was nominated.
Sorry.
It was Arthur that was nominated.
Oh, is Arthur who nominated? Oh,
Yes.
I see. Arthur gets nominated. Yeah. So let's go around the room and we'll finish with Arthur and your energy noise. Although as the last person, you might be able to choose any noise you like. And as somebody who's the person who got us all started many years ago. So who is next? Joachim, you went, Elizabeth? No? And Muthoni? And Samuel. I think it's those three, right? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Odondi, Program Trainee, Heinrich Böll Foundation. The sound I choose is charcoal. Burning.
Yeah. So say it a little louder. You may have to use your mic during the orchestra on that one. Yeah, Muthoni.
Hello, everyone. My name is Modani Ndohio from the Africa Development Bank, the Climate Change and Green Growth Department. And my energy sound is what transformers make, and that's bzzz.
Yeah, okay, good. Samuel.
Oh, my name is Edikite Ochieng Oredikite.
Sorry, excuse me for getting your name wrong.
It's okay. I'm
Yeah.
from East Africa, and I'm going to make a sound of a water upstream that is for the hydroelectric power. It's come with.
Wow, good. Yeah, Nixon, you made your sound already, didn't? Yeah, he did his, yeah. So is there anybody who's not made his sound for this wonderful orchestra? Then Arthur, I'm afraid you have to unmute yourself. Introduce yourself as something other than the outline of a head. And you might even reveal yourself and give us a sound.
Hi, good morning, Barbara. I would show you my face other than the outline, but it seems somebody has the control, so I cannot display myself. But being that the case, there's a face behind that outline. My name is Arthur Mulero. I am a Deputy Managing Director at SID in Rome, and also work with the crew in Nairobi. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be with you
today for a number of reasons which are beyond my control, but I would have loved to be there. Yeah, great conversations. Now, in terms of the noise, I'm not very good at making noises. So I don't know if you can hear that.
One more
But
time.
that is the sound of a jet plane taking off.
That's a serious part of your life. Give it to us one more time.
It's the sound of a jet plane taking off.
All right. Well, it wasn't coming through. I take it you're doing it from a recording?
Yes, I was. But anyway, it's a loud whine. So
Okay.
obviously, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll add your loud whine. That's WHINE. And the way we did the orchestra yesterday, or whenever we did this, we started with the rhythms, and we had a goat rhythm. The goat is here. We had a paintbrush rhythm, and the paintbrush is here. And we have a new windmill, which also has a very rhythmic sound to it. So I think we start with goat, paintbrush, and then windmill, if you'll come in. And then after we have the rhythms set, and you just keep going with your rhythm, the chickens come in. We had a number of chickens yesterday, or on our first day. And then two of us had some children's calls to let the other children in the neighborhood know they were around and were looking for somebody to play with. So we'll have the children's calls, and after the children come in, all the others will come in, and then finally the energy noises will try to squeak in somehow into this cacophonous natural human world, okay? So goat, are you ready to start us off? Go, goat. Chickens. Children's calls.
Might want to switch the mics on.
All the others, please. Energy, come in. Thank you, everybody. I had to stop because I couldn't whistle. I was laughing too much. Thank you, everyone, for the Energy Orchestra. For those of us who are staying here tonight, I think we may need to have another rehearsal around the fire. And for those of us who are online, please join us. We're going to break at, well, for the next 45 minutes. We'll set up for the launch, and please come back at 1:30. That's East African time. I don't know where you are, but I hope you can adjust. And thank you, and nice to see your face, Passy. Nice to see your face briefly, Arthur. And have a good lunch. We'll see you at 1:30.
To our virtual participants, please do grab a quick lunch. We will be coming back for the launch of the Energy Research Compendium. So do take a break, but please remember to come back for the launch of Energy for Home. in an hour. So see you then.
ذبح مالك والبياض la sodana atia Beni Sabala Beni Sabala Beni Sabala Pion Pion Badu bidi bidabo Badu bidi bidabo la coligoi, winema la coligoi, que bola la tongo, que bola la congo, la sodana atia, Beni Sabala, Beni Sabala, Beni Sabala, Beni Sabala, Pion, Pion. Azurwa kana mayalla Ira kamboy Zoko kamboy Kadare kamboy Tumayina for yura Na win waka fokasona Na win waka fokasona Na win waka fokasona Hey, Akambo, Akambo, hey, Akambo, Barabara, Barabara, Zabala, Kadare Kambo, Beni Zabala. Kadare kamboy, yembi somega, yembi somega, yembi somega, ay, yembi somega, oh, yembi somega, ay. Mariko kagele yalla la dunya. Iye warikoi iye wariko natifebi badendila ni waritifebi natifebi mogotifilela boy ni waritifebi natifebi musoko bigegele yala iye wariko iye wariko so amul khalis so ko yorul kendula fale so ko amul so ko yorul don tax jabar so amul khalis so febare do mana faju ci dundi iye khalis khalis. Mariko kagele yala amalu amalu. Ay iye wariko. Iye wariko. Nati febi badenti love.